Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Please subscribe and like my videos. Today we are diving into one of the most dramatic turning points in Eastern Europe, where the one-siren rule of Alexander Lukashenko is facing its biggest collapse since the day he took power. The streets of Minsk, the heart of Belarus, have turned into a chaotic war zone as government forces, defecting soldiers, and enraged citizens clash in what many are calling the final act of a long and brutal regime. What began as scattered protests has transformed into a nationwide revolt, shaking the very foundations of Lukashenko's empire. The exterior of Belarus today shows the scars of a nation under siege. The once quiet boulevards of Minsk are lined with barricades, armored vehicles, and columns of smoke rising from government buildings and police checkpoints. Tanks rumble through the wide Soviet-era avenues, while civilians take shelter inside metro stations, schools, and basement. The government headquarters, once a symbol of control, now sits surrounded by sandbags and razor wire. Soldiers with worn faces stand at intersections, some confused about which side they are truly fighting for. The capital, once called the cleanest city in Europe, has transformed into a grim battlefield, echoing with explosions and sirens. The city's iconic Independence Square is now a center of resistance, where protesters have raised the old white-red-white flag of Belarus, a symbol of freedom long suppressed by Lukashenko's rule. Everywhere you look, there are signs of a collapsing state, shattered windows, burnt vehicles, and slogans painted on the walls demanding an end to dictatorship. Inside this chaos, the interior of the regime itself has begun to rot from within. The once loyal generals and ministers who for years maintained Lukashenko's grip on power through fear and loyalty are now divided. Some have fled the country seeking refuge in Russia or neutral European states, while others secretly align themselves with the growing opposition movement. Lukashenko, isolated inside his heavily fortified residence, is reportedly surrounded by a small circle of advisors who no longer trust one another. The atmosphere inside his compound is said to be tense, filled with paranoia and despair. Communication channels are collapsing as loyal commanders defect and supply lines break down. Even within the military, soldiers whisper about their families joining the protests, and many refuse to fire on their own people. The interior structure of power that once seemed unshakable has started to disintegrate. Economic elites who once profited from Lukashenko's regime are now fleeing with their assets, leaving behind an empty treasury and unpaid workers. The intelligence services, long feared for their brutality, are reportedly split between those who still support the president and those who want to negotiate with the opposition. It's a government eating itself from the inside, a system built on fear that can no longer control the storm it created. The performance of the Belarusian state apparatus is failing on every front. The police are overstretched, exhausted, and demoralized. Many refugee orders or quietly join the protesters. The army, designed to defend against external threats, was never trained to fight its own people, and that confusion is visible in every encounter between soldiers and civilians. Videos circulating online show units switching sides mid-battle, waving white flags, or letting demonstrators pass through checkpoints unharmed. Government propaganda channels have gone silent, unable to explain the growing cracks in the system. Infrastructure is collapsing. Electricity cuts are frequent. Internet blackouts paralyze communication, and fuel shortages leave military convoys stranded. Meanwhile, international sanctions and frozen assets have strangled what's left of Belarus's economy. Factories stand still, transport routes are blocked, and inflation is climbing daily. The performance of Lukashenko's leadership, once seen as stubborn but stable, is now described by analysts as desperate improvisation. He moves from one crisis to another, issuing orders that few obey, trying to project power that no longer exists. Even his closest ally, Moscow, seems hesitant to intervene fully, fearing another unwinnable quagmire on its border. The safety features of this collapsing empire have failed completely. Belarus was once known for its strict control, a country where every movement was monitored, every protest crushed, and every voice silenced. But that illusion of safety built through oppression has turned against itself. Citizens no longer feel protected, they feel hunted. Security forces who once promised stability now act like mercenaries, raiding homes, detaining journalists, and shooting at crowds. Yet the people have lost their fear. Across Belarus, from Brest to Go, workers are organizing self-defense units. Former soldiers are joining resistance groups, and ordinary citizens are using encrypted networks to share real-time information about troop movements. The country is on the edge of a civil breakdown. Hospitals overflow with the wounded, and families search for missing relatives in makeshift shelters. International humanitarian organizations call it a silent war, one where information is as powerful as weapons. The old safety net of control has vanished, replaced by a landscape of mistrust, rebellion, and survival. Despite this chaos, there are unique selling points in this historic struggle. The people of Belarus have shown an extraordinary level of courage and unity. For the first time in decades, different political groups, trade unions, students, and even retired officers are standing side by side under one flag. This movement isn't just against Lukashenko for a new Belarus, one that dreams of democracy, dignity, and peace. Internationally, the Belarusian struggle has captured attention far beyond its borders. European nations are holding emergency meetings. Neighboring countries are preparing for refugee waves, and independent media outlets are broadcasting live from secret locations. The opposition, led by exiled figures and supported by digital activists, continues to coordinate strikes and protests despite censorship. The resilience of the Belarusian people has become their greatest strength, their unique selling point in the eyes of the world. This uprising is not just a rebellion. It's a declaration that a nation long silenced has finally found its voice. When we talk about the price of this conflict, it's not only about economics. The human cost is devastating. Thousands have been arrested, hundreds injured, and many killed in the escalating clashes. The economy has suffered billions in losses. Factories shut down, trade halted, and international investors fleeing. Families are torn apart as men join local defense units while women and children cross the borders into Lithuania and Poland, seeking safety. The Belarusian ruble has plummeted, food prices are skyrocketing, and unemployment has reached record levels. But the real price is emotional and moral. The people who once believed in a quiet life now find themselves fighting for basic survival. The once proud image of Minsk as a modern European capital is gone, replaced by burned out streets and checkpoints. The world watches with mixed emotions, sympathy for the people, frustration at the silence of powerful nations, and fear that this conflict might spill into neighboring regions. The cost of keeping power has become unbearable, and Lukashenko's empire is paying it with the lives and future of its citizens. As the situation deepens, reports suggest that Lukashenko's control is slipping by the hour. His speeches are filled with anger, denial, and accusations against foreign enemies. Yet his words fall flat as his own officials ignore orders or disappear. The once dreaded police units are surrendering to civilians, and key state television broadcasters have stopped airing propaganda. Instead, independent journalists broadcast from hidden studios, showing footage of soldiers joining demonstrators and neighborhoods organizing protection zones. The opposition calls this the final winter of the dictatorship. Rumors spread that Lukashenko may flee the country, but others say he's preparing for a final stand inside his palace. His empire, built over 3 decades of control, manipulation, and fear, now crumbles under the weight of its own lies. The walls of power are closing in, and Minsk, once the stage of his victory parades, is now his cage. In conclusion, Belarus stands at a historic crossroads. The fall of Lukashenko's empire is not just the end of one man's rule. It's the rebirth of a nation that has suffered in silence for too long. From the exterior chaos of war at Minsk to the interior breakdown of power, from the failed performance of a dictatorship to the courage of ordinary people, this is a story of a nation awakening. The safety that once came through fear is gone, replaced by the dangerous but powerful hope of freedom. The unique strength of the Belarusian people lies not in their weapons, but in their unity and determination. The price they pay today will be remembered as the cost of reclaiming their country's soul. History is being written on the streets of Minsk, and the world is watching as an empire built on oppression finally collapses. Belarus is on fire, not just with destruction, but with the burning desire for change. And when the smoke clears, the people will decide what kind of nation rises from the ashes. Thanks for watching.